Grammar Lesson 5.1, Direct Object Pronouns. We're going to start today's lesson with a brief review of something that you should have learned in your English class, and that's simply, what is a pronoun? The easiest way to define a pronoun is that it's a word that takes the place of a noun. You've learned in Spanish class about one particular type of pronoun called the subject pronoun. In English, these would include I, you, he, she, we, and they. As you've learned in Spanish, there's a few more because there's different ways to say you. So the subject pronouns that you've learned in Spanish are yo, tú, él, ella, and usted. Those would be the singular subject pronouns. And then you've also learned the plural subject pronouns nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. The way subject pronouns are used is they take the place of the noun when the noun happens to be the subject of the sentence. If I was telling a story about myself, I would probably not always refer to myself as Kelsey. Instead, I would refer to myself as I if I was speaking in English, or yo if I was speaking in Spanish. Another example of the subject of my sentence were the boys, I might instead choose to say they. Or in Spanish, if it's los chicos, I might just say ellos. The type of pronoun we're going to focus on today is called the direct object pronoun. In English, some examples are me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. An example of how we might use a direct object pronoun in English would be, instead of saying I love Carlos, I might simply substitute Carlos for the word him and say I love him. Or if I am reading the book, instead of saying I read the book, I might say I read it. That's going to be the main focus of our lesson today, but just kind of looking ahead to give you a preview because you've probably learned in your English classes that there's a lot of different kinds of pronouns, and that would be correct. Some of the other kinds that we'll get to eventually, not anytime too soon, but some of the other pronouns that you'll learn about in Spanish class include possessive pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, reflexive pronouns, indefinite pronouns, and there will even be a couple more too. Let's talk a little bit about what is a direct object. Well, the direct object is the recipient of an action. So this means the action is being done directly toward that person, place, or thing, and that's why it's called a direct object. An example in English, I write a letter, or I kiss my boyfriend. In both of these, that action is being done directly at someone or something. So the letter is receiving the action of writing, the boyfriend is receiving the action of the kiss. The same works in Spanish. So yo escribo una carta is an example, and in this particular example, a letter would be my direct object, una carta. In Spanish, yo beso a mi novio, the direct object would be my boyfriend, mi novio. You'll notice that when a direct object noun is used in Spanish that happens to be a person or a pet, we use the personal a. Hopefully you remember this from prior lessons. But the personal a is used to indicate whenever an action is being done directly to or at a person or a pet. Pets sometimes in Spanish are grouped in the same category as people. This personal a is not needed, however, when the recipient of the action is an object. So that's why I use the personal a with the second example, yo beso a mi novio, but I didn't use it in the first example, yo escribo una carta, because the letter is not a person. You should have a chart similar to this in your notes. Let's go ahead and fill this in. The direct object pronouns if you're talking about an action that's being done toward one person or thing, are on the left side, so those are your singular direct object pronouns, and the plural direct object pronouns will be on the right side. If I want to say that an action is being done toward me, in Spanish I would use the direct object pronoun me. If it's being done to you, I would use te. If it's being done toward him, it, when it happens to be a masculine object, or usted, when usted happens to be a male, I would use lo. If it's being done toward her, it, when it is feminine, or usted, when usted is a female, then I use the direct object pronoun la. Moving on to the plural side of our chart, when we are the recipient of an action or it's being done toward us, we use the direct object pronoun nos. If it's being done toward you, and you is a group of people and we're in Spain, I would use the direct object pronoun os. If it's being done toward them or you guys or the ustedes group when it happens to be males or mixed group, I would use los. If the recipient of the action is them, they're females, or you guys and you're females, it would be las. Let's look at a couple of examples. We're going to use those same examples that we just used on the other slide. So we have I write a letter, yo escribo una carta, and I kiss my boyfriend, yo beso a mi novio. In the first sentence, I write a letter, we can take out the phrase a letter and substitute it with it. I write it. We can also change my boyfriend in the second example to him. I kiss him. The Spanish will work kind of similar. So we can take out the phrase una carta, and since una carta is feminine, we would substitute for the direct object pronoun la. If I want to say yo beso a mi novio, but I want to just say instead of I kiss my boyfriend, I kiss him, then I would change a mi novio to lo. The thing that makes the Spanish direct object pronoun a little bit different than the English is that it's placed in a different spot. So in your English examples, we simply swapped out the direct object noun for a direct object pronoun. In the Spanish examples, you swap out the noun for the pronoun, but you also have to rearrange your sentence a little bit. And your direct object pronoun is actually going to go before your conjugated verb. So instead of saying yo escribo la, you would say yo la escribo. And instead of saying yo beso lo, you say yo lo beso. To give you kind of a more clean version of these examples, these would be the sentences that we just formed. I write it, yo la escribo. I kiss him, yo lo beso. Here's a couple more examples. If I wanted to say we have them, and them is referring to something that is feminine, like las galletas, the cookies, then I would say nosotros las tenemos. However, if I want to say we have them and I'm referring to something masculine like the presents, los regalos, then I would say nosotros los tenemos. Here's another example. They visit us. The direct object pronoun is us, so our example would be ellos nos visitan. If you want to express that an action is not happening or someone is not receiving that action, you just put the word no before your direct object pronoun. Here's an example. And if I want to say they don't visit us, I would say ellos no nos visitan. Make sure you put the no in the correct spot because you don't want to separate your direct object pronoun and your verb by putting the word no in the middle. There's one more grammar rule I want to cover really quickly, and that is that when you have a direct object pronoun and it's used with an infinitive construction, so that's anytime you have an infinitive verb in a phrase. It could be a formula, it could just be that you have two verbs back to back. But anyway, when you have one of those constructions, the direct object pronoun can be placed before the conjugated verb, or it can be attached to the end of the infinitive verb. Either form is acceptable, and either one is really pretty common as well. Let's look at a couple of examples. You're familiar with the ir plus a plus infinitive verb formula to express that someone is going to do something. So here's an example. To say he is going to bring it, I could either say él va a traerlo, attaching the lo to the end of the infinitive verb to bring, traer, or I can put the lo before the conjugated verb, which would be va, and say él lo va a traer. Él lo va a traer, él va a traerlo. They're interchangeable. Here's another example using the tener plus que plus infinitive verb formula. Tú tienes que recordarlo, or tú lo tienes que recordar. Either one would be acceptable again. Here's an example of where we use two verbs back to back, so we conjugate the first verb and leave the second in the infinitive form. So if I wanted to say, my mother can make it, or my mother can do it, then I would say, mi madre puede hacerlo, or mi madre lo puede hacer. And either one is considered perfectly acceptable. You'll kind of develop a personal preference in which one you like better, and that's totally fine. But I want you to be familiar with both of these so that if you see it or hear it in conversation or in writing, you'll understand that they both basically mean the same thing.